Hello and welcome to AMM Talks, a virtual forum for professional wedding officiants to share their expertise. I'm Marissa. I'm the marketing and events coordinator at AMM. And today I'm here with my co-host Jessica, AMM's lead writer, who will be helping out behind the scenes. So please send her a message if you have any technical questions. And today we are joined by Reverend Laura Cannon. Now, Laura is the president of the International Association of Professional Wedding Officiants and has been a professional wedding officiant for more than 15 years. She's married over 1,000 couples and is the owner of Ceremony Officiants based in Washington, D.C. She's an accomplished professional public speaker, a member of the National Speakers Association, and frequently travels across the country speaking on topics of business, psychology, and mindfulness, all related to her recent book, The Conscious Entrepreneur. Next month, March 13th, Laura will be presenting at AMM's Officiant Accelerator event in DC. So today you're getting a sneak peek at the incredible event. Now we can go ahead and shout out to Laura. We'll hear from her and then we'll open things up for questions. So Laura, I am going to go ahead and spotlight you and you can go ahead and take over.
Thank you so much, Marissa, and thank you, Jessica, for hosting with us today, and welcome. I'm so happy to see all of you commenting here in the chat. It looks like we've got a great group coming from not just all over the US, but all over the world. This is very exciting. So you've come here today to see how can you take your officiating career to the next level. Well, it was very nice of Marissa to say that I've been doing this for 15 years. It's actually even been more than that. This is 20 years now. So I would love if you would type in the chat and just tell me, how long have you been officiating? Is this your first year? Are you new? Or have you been doing this a long time like myself? Would love to hear. 6 months, 1 year, 9 years, 25 years. All right. Excellent. New officiant, first year, 18 years, 2006. Oh, this is excellent. So this just goes to show, we've got people that are coming into this field all the time, but also people who have made this a career, people who are veterans in this industry. So that's so wonderful. Okay, people who are just gotten ordained, not an officiant yet. Yeah, great. Okay, and haven't gotten one yet. Well, that's okay. We all start somewhere. I started my first officiating wedding event was because someone that I knew that I was ordained through other things in my life. And she said, you're the closest spiritual kind of advisor I have in my life. And would you perform our wedding? And I said, well, I've never done that before, but I have done some public speaking. So if you're willing to let me learn on you, I'll do it. And that was back in 2004. So it has been some time now. But when I did that first wedding, I caught the bug and I knew immediately I had one of those Oprah aha moments. And I knew this is what I am meant to be doing. And I'm just so lucky that it has turned into a career. So I've learned a lot about what it takes to take something that begins as a hobby or just something you're doing for fun and really making it your life's work. So that's what I'm going to talk to you about today. So I'm going to share my screen with you. And hopefully it will technically work okay. All right. Great, wonderful. All right, now let me just make sure. Yep, okay. Are you guys all seeing that okay? Okay, great. Good. So a little bit of background about me. Let me share some of the photos with you here. Okay. So here's me officiating one of my favorite weddings. This was for a wonderful couple. We got married right in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. This was a small elopement that I did through my company, DC Elopements. I have another company, Ceremony Officiants, which provides officiant services through about 13 states and throughout the Mid-Atlantic and also part of California. And I have my own church, so I'm also able to ordain through that. I'm a member of the National Speakers Association. And one of the things I'm most proud of is my CPWO credential. So that means that I am a certified professional wedding officiant. So I'm going to tell you more about that later in the presentation and how you too could become a CPWO. So today we're going to discuss where the best places to focus your time and money are, some resources you can use to build your business, and how you can stand out from the crowd. You know, there's a lot of competitors in every business, but we don't always have to think of them as competitors. We simply need to know, well, what is it that makes us stand out in the crowd? So this is a true statement that I have found from being in business. You can do anything you want, but you simply can't do everything. So yes, it might be nice to be advertising on every outlet where advertising is available, but our resources of either time or money don't make it possible to do everything. So when that's the case, then we really have to think about, where are we going to focus our resources? So your most important and your valuable resource that your business has, no matter how long you've been doing it or how big or small, is your time and your money. So you have to know how to manage both of these things really wisely. You have to think about, what do couples really want? So unless a couple has already seen you perform another wedding, what they're really looking for is they want to book an officiant that they feel that they can trust. Well, how are you going to establish that and stand out in a marketplace where there's lots of other officiants? And how are you going to communicate that trust? So the way that that's really demonstrated to couples is through both your education and your experience. And sometimes maybe we might have more of one than the other. Like some of you were saying, you've been ordained, but you haven't had the opportunity to get the experience yet. So maybe then you lean into the educational piece. And you want to find a way to show and tell your couples that you have this education and experience. So the education might be degrees and diplomas. Perhaps you went to seminary. Perhaps you've done special trainings and certifications. For example, if you've attended Wedding MBA, where every year AMM has a booth and IAPWO has a booth, if you've attended that, then you know that you can also get a certification there just for having attended. Then, of course, you could belong to an association. And in our case, that's IAPWO, the International Association of Professional Wedding Officiants. You can also communicate your education through blogs and social posts. So that's not really talking about what you know, but that's providing education and resources for the couples. You're showing them by sharing articles and resources that you're up to date with the current trends that are happening in weddings. For example, there's a new trend that I was just sharing with my couples. I can't say it's a trend I personally love, but there's been this trend recently of couples whispering their own vows to each other in front of the audience. So not having a private moment of vows, but doing it in front of everyone very quietly. So I might share a piece about that, but then I might give my experience and I might say, while this sounds really great in theory, maybe here are some things you could consider about how that's leaving your guests feeling. So even if it's not an educational article that you've written, you can share a lot and show a lot about your style and your personality and show that you're someone that deserves their trust by providing your particular take on these trends. Obviously, experience. How do we show that? Of course, reviews, testimonials, having other couples share what it was like to work with you, having those professional credentials. Just being able to have a CPWO badge on my website tells couples something. It tells them that I've gone above and beyond in making this my career. And of course, there's awards and accolades that you can earn through different avenues, such as like if you're advertising on the Knot or Wedding Wire, you might earn these best of weddings. There are also local awards like that. And of course, traditional press. So there are many opportunities just as you start doing more weddings, when your couple's weddings get shared in national media or in local media, those become things that, again, you can share and show your experience. So these are really helpful when you're thinking about, how am I going to show a couple that I have what it takes? So of course, training and certifications. Well, this is also, the main thing that I think is the most important when we're getting started. So, we have, oh, so sorry about that. Oh no, now I've clicked you in the wrong way. Okay. So I really want to talk about first the Officiant Accelerator. The Officiant Accelerator, if you haven't been to one yet, if it hasn't come to your city, please check it out. This has been an awesome partnership between IAPWO and AMM, where we're coming to these different cities and we're providing these full days of education. So you can hear from others who've been doing this for a long time. I'll be at the one in DC, and our vice president of IAPWO, Bethel Nathan, she's also at every one of these Officiant Accelerator trainings. And they're so wonderful because it's also a great opportunity for you to get to know the other people that are in your market. Now, there's also webinars and conferences, and these are great when you want to learn very specific skills. So maybe you want to learn a technique about vow writing and how to help your couples with vow writing. So there's different types of webinars and conferences that you can sign up for, such as Wedding MBA, a very popular one. And then also there's IAPWO accredited training programs. So I'll get more into that later, because what's very exciting is that AMM was actually the flagship program. It was the first provider of education that got certified by the IAPWO. So that is something it should be very proud of. So here we talk more about this. So why IAPWO is really important when it comes to accrediting content is this means if you find a program, an educational provider, and there are several, so AMM, for example, or the Celebrant Institute, or Unboring Weddings, or a program that Bethel offers, a business of officiating course also through AMM. All of these courses have been reviewed by a team at IAPWO to ensure that it is efficient, relevant content. So this isn't like just going to some generic wedding vendor training. This is specific content that you can utilize for you and your business. And then what happens is the IAPWO then scores the content of the program. And each program then can help you earn your credential to become a CPWO. So, like I said, AMM has 2 of these accredited programs. And if you go to the IAPWO website, this is also a way for you to be able to see, well, which of the programs, I see so many on the internet, which are the ones that are really going to help me elevate my business? Which are the ones that are going to move the needle? So you can see here on this list, we have AMM's course, the Master Celebrant Certificate, and you'll see that each of these courses receive a certain number of points in different categories, and 15 is the max number of points that you could earn in any category. But when you're earning your own personal CPWO credential, you have to make sure that you have received the adequate level of training in each one of these competency areas. So AMM in their program, when they mix that with the Business of Officiating program, together, those 2 programs complete all of the educational requirements that someone would need for earning the CPWO. So these other programs here, you can also see how they rate. So some programs are stronger in preparing you to actually go out and perform your first wedding. And I saw a lot of you are in that space. But even those of you who, like myself, who've been doing this for 15, 20, 25 years, business is a skill that you're always learning. And so then if you look at the Business of Officiating course, there's a lot more content related to that in that course. So this is also a way to help you identify which is a program that is best for the needs that you really have, that you want to grow for your business. So these are all carefully evaluated and accredited, so they actually mean something. Not every program that says, I'm going to give you a certificate really holds any weight, or really it may not get you to where you're trying to go. And a lot of people are trying to earn a CPWO. So let's talk about that in a minute. But first, let's talk about the IAPWO, because ultimately being a part of an association really helps to establish you as someone who is committed to their career. You're not just buying advertising on one of the major sites, right? Like anyone can do that. You don't have to have ever done a wedding before. With IAPWO, these are people who are saying, like, this is what we've committed our professional lives to. Doesn't mean you have to do it full time. But there are lots of event industry associations. So, you've got like NACE and ILEA and ABC and WIPA. These are all associations that we have, but none of them are specific to wedding officiants. There's only one, and that is the IAPWO. So celebrants and officiants worldwide join this organization for a lot of different reasons. And we'll get more into those, but first let me tell you, it really is the best value that there is out there. For $99 a year, and by the way, if you take that AMM course, they actually give you the first year of membership to IAPWO free. So that's just such an incredible value. But even if you haven't taken that course or not planning to take that course, this $99 pays for itself almost immediately, because you also get free advertising on weddingofficiants.com. So it's a way for you to also have your name out there. You get a free directory listing on IAPWO's website. So as the name and brand recognition of the association grows and people come to that website, they see you listed there. And again, this is just adding to all of those elements that help to really show your couples that you are taking your career to the next level. So you'll get this membership badge that you can put on your website. We have so many educational articles, and this is what our members often use. Like I was saying before, they share these articles so that they can show that they are really up to date on current trends. They have their own take on what's being shared. We have our own Facebook group, which is so great because, being an officiant can sometimes be really isolating. We don't have these get-togethers always where we're, getting to talk to each other and talk shop, except for the accelerator, which is why it's my favorite. But we do this with IAPWO in a virtual way. So every quarter we do a members happy hour and we hang out online and talk shop about the latest trends, what we're seeing in the business, what we're seeing in the industry. It also provides you with access to discounted liability insurance. If you're running a business, definitely insurance is really important. And in some areas, it's required that the officiant has their own professional liability policy to even be able to perform a wedding at that venue. I know at the Marriott hotels that are local to us, that's definitely the case. So this is a way for you to get discounted access to that. And if you're trying to earn the CPWO, when you're a member, you get a discounted fee for that. So quarterly newsletters, events, support, the best thing that you can buy for $99 that really shows like, hey, couples, I care about what I'm doing and I'm doing the work to educate myself and put myself on top as a professional wedding officiant. So that CPWO credential that I said that I was so proud of is the industry standard for professional wedding officiants. It's a credential. So CPWO is a those trademarked 4 letters and badge. It's the same as the word realtor, Realtor is a trademark term that means something. So not everyone can call themselves a certified professional wedding officiant. It's a trademark term. It's a term that means you have to have gone through a certain level of education and training in order to be able to say that. So you need both education and experience. So to earn that, you might not all be ready to get that yet, but it's really good in business to have something that you're working towards. So once you have 50 signed contracts for weddings that you've performed, and they've happened in a 5-year period, you've got 10 5-star reviews online for your services, and you've earned those educational points from taking any one of those accredited programs, then you're able to apply to get your CPWO. Again, just another way that you can take your career to the next level and really stand out amongst the crowd. So I know we didn't have very much time today, and I really wanted to leave as much time as possible to be able to answer any of the questions that you have. I know for me, that's the most valuable part of any of these types of sessions, as I always want to get my questions answered. So I'm going to turn it back over to Marissa and stop sharing screen with you. If you want to take a screenshot, if you want to find me online, or you want to send me an email, these are all the places where you can find me. And I'll go ahead and turn off the screen share, turn it back to Marissa, and then she can lead us through some Q&A.
Excellent, Laura, thank you so much. That was wonderful. So we are going to go ahead and segue into the Q&A portion of this presentation. So during this Q&A, you can either raise your virtual hand for us to call on you, and then we will ask you to unmute yourself and you can vocally ask your question. Or if you open up the question and answer Q&A tab to type your questions in on the panel, we can answer it that way. You can also type your question into the chat, and we'll keep an eye out there and try to get to as much as possible, if not verbally, then through the chat. So I'm going to go ahead and throw it back over to Laura, and you guys can throw your questions to us. Okay, so question from Jessica. Her question is, what are some important points to include in our contracts that we might not think at first?
Oh, well, I'm glad that you asked that question, because contracts are really important and not everyone knows that when they're starting out. And so this is another IAPWO benefit. So we actually have, I worked personally paying thousands of dollars, because those expensive lawyers cost like $500 an hour. Spent thousands of dollars having a really solid officiant contract written. And then what I did was I worked with a woman named Annette, and her company is called Your Legal BFF. And her and I worked together, she is an attorney, to then take what I already had and to create a template that officiants could use that had no idea what to put in it or what are the specific clauses. Because if you go to most attorneys, they don't necessarily know the ins and outs of the officiant business. So that's another benefit of IAPWO, and that one of the benefits to the association, there's like a whole member page of all of these different kinds of discounts that you get. And one of them is discounted access to that contract. But anyone could go purchase it. You could go to Your Legal BFF. And contracts should always be reviewed by someone in your state. So an attorney in your state, even if you got one of those, I would say, well, find someone who doesn't have to do the work, but could review it, because new clauses get added all the time. For example, a new clause that recently we've talked about adding on the advice of an attorney was a firearms clause. So I don't know if you saw the story of the non-professional wedding officiant who, in an attempt to get people's attention at the wedding to let them know the ceremony was starting, fired blanks out of a gun and then shot his grandson and was criminally charged. And, while you might think like, well, I'm never going to be bringing a gun to my wedding ceremony when I officiate, it did bring up some questions about like, well, what are your policies around that? Are you going to have something in your contract about whether or not you're okay with there being firearms at the event? And in some states, the open carry states, it's going to be different everywhere. But these are some of the things we may not think about, and why it's really great to have other officiants that you're able to communicate with who've done these contracts to be able to say, well, here's an interesting one that I've recently added. So again, just the benefit of community and relationships with other officiants, I think, is important there too.
Right. Okay. And I think that was actually from Paula. So thank you so much, Paula, for submitting that question. We've got another one in the Q&A. Would you be able to do this from New Zealand is the question.
Well, do you mean would you be able to officiate from New Zealand, or do you mean would you be able to be part of the association from New Zealand? Could you say more in the chat there? That would be great.
Both.
Both. Okay. Yes, we do have, I believe we have one member that is in New Zealand now, and we have a bunch that are in Australia. So you definitely can join the IAPWO. In terms of the laws that are specific to New Zealand, you might want to check out AMM may have some information about that on their website. I'm not quite sure. But definitely you want to look at the local laws where you are, because it really does change from place to place. Like, for example, Australia is very different than in the US. It's a very long process. It's an expensive process to become authorized by their government to celebrate marriages. So you just want to make sure that you're doing that local research where it's going to be more up to date. But possibly AMM may have some articles about that too. Okay. Oh, I'm
Right.
seeing so many questions here.
Yes, let's see. Let's go ahead and it looks like Katrina does have a question. I don't see it here in the chat. So either Katrina, you can ask the question here in the chat, or I will ask you briefly to unmute yourself if you want to go ahead and ask here on live.
Thank you, ladies. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yes. I am a part of the association, and it has been a game changer for me. But I do have a question because I've had a lot of couples. I'm actually licensed and ordained through my church, but I also got my certification through AMM.
Yes.
And so North Carolina has been giving us a fit about being licensed and ordained online in North Carolina. So can you guys talk on that, or would that not be an appropriate question on this platform?
I'm happy to comment about that. And Marissa, if you'd like to add anything about that. What I can say is that sometimes what is legally allowed is not what is practiced by the local authorities. And we've seen this happen in a lot of places. Pennsylvania is another one in which actually they ended up bringing a lawsuit against the two people who worked in the county clerk's office because the county clerk was giving advice that is different from the actual law and telling couples that they couldn't be married by someone who did not have a brick and mortar church when that's simply not the case. So, we see this happen, and it does happen. Since you have two ordinations, and if they are giving you this trouble, I would say if there's not a problem for you to use your quote unquote brick and mortar organization, or ordination as the authority by which you're signing the license, that's probably what I would do if I had both and I knew I was getting hassled. However, I do know that Marissa can speak to the legality, I'm sure, of whether or not AMM is okay in the Carolinas, because both of them are a little squirrely. But I would say if you have both, you're good.
Yes, and Jessica had just actually put in the chat a little more information about the North Carolina officiants and the practices there to see what's actually legal. So you should be able to click on that link. It'll give you a lot more information on that specific state. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, because I have a lot of friends that actually got ordained and licensed online, and they have been using their AMM ordination license to marry couples and haven't had any problems. But they did have a few couples that told them they were told that their wedding would not be illegal if they were married by an online officiant. And like I said, I think one of the biggest problems was actually another organization. I don't want to say it on this platform, but I think they were one of the ones that their ordinations were not valid. But from my understanding, AMM should be good. So thank you for that. I have done my research, and the link she put on there, that's the one I have. So that's what I tell my friends. If you've been licensed through AMM, you should be covered.
Yeah.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Katrina. Okay.
Yes. And Katrina, I'll say one more thing about that, which is to say, like, I was aware of a case that did happen there, where that was argued, and they still determined that regardless of the status of the officiant, because when the couple hired them, they believed them to be an ordained officiant, that their marriage was not voided. So even in the end, it is still going to be a legal marriage for the couple if you have an internet ordination that follows the rules of that state. So, I mean, I'm not an attorney, so don't take this as legal advice, of course. But as you said, you've done your own resource, and there's some great research, and there's some great resources here.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. We also have Bianca. So she's asking, how do you market yourself? For example, meeting with wedding vendors such as photographers and event planners. How would you answer that?
Sure. So, when you're first getting started, it's harder because one of the best ways to meet these people is by doing weddings, to really make those relationships and connections when you're out doing weddings. Before that happens, I found that when I first started my business, the best way was to do what they had was smaller bridal shows. So these would be bridal shows, which usually they're called wedding shows now. We've kind of gotten rid of that terminology, but you'll see these wedding showcases at local venues. So venues who are trying to show off what they have to offer, they'll often allow local vendors to set up tables and market to their couples. And usually that's a really good low cost way. Sometimes it's free, sometimes there's a small fee. But to be able to kind of get in and network with other vendors in your community, also Facebook often will have local wedding vendor message boards. That's a great place to do it. And, I really encourage the old-fashioned cup of coffee. When I started out, even though it was 20 years ago, I really got strategic about the relationships I wanted to make and the different vendors that seemed similar to myself that I thought would attract a similar type of couple. And I called them up and I said, I love your work. I love what I see that you're doing. I'd like to get to know you more, and I'd like to get your business more and, hear more about what you're doing, and so I would get to know them and I would get to know their business and make a genuine relationship. And I think when you focus on that, when you focus on genuine relationship making, in these really like kind of old fashioned ways, you're like, go have a cup of coffee, go to lunch, like they really pay dividends. So I'd encourage you to do that.
Fantastic. Okay, so that one is good. And let's see, Carrie had a question of what does professional liability insurance mean exactly? What's it for? You mentioned it might be required in some areas.
Yes. Also, I'm seeing great answers that I'm not giving that are in the chat from other members. This is great. This is exactly what I'm saying. Like getting all of these officiants together in one space. We're just, we're not competitors. We're working together. So that's so great. So yes, professional liability insurance. Many venues will require that all vendors have what they call a certificate of professional liability. They'll want to see that you're insured for usually up to $1 million. It doesn't cost $1 million. So when you have the IAPWO discount, it's about $200 a year for that insurance. And then that way, anytime a venue asks you to provide a professional liability certificate, you have it to provide for them. Again, this also makes you stand out. You can put this on your website, like, fully licensed and insured, able to provide the certificate for your wedding. This isn't going to be applicable to all venues, but really large venues, this is often the case. So it's really good to have. Also, this is just for your own protection. Now, you might think, what could I possibly do that is going to be a liability? Well, I haven't done anything, knock on wood, in 20 years, but I've seen a lot of things. And what I've seen when it comes to lawsuits is that you don't have to do anything to be sued. So sometimes if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, if the bride's dress catches on fire because you've suggested that there's a candle lighting ceremony and something catches on fire, that can be a problem. It's easier to see how this is necessary for something like a DJ who's laying out wires that people might trip on. But you get insurance not for the things that you can predict, but you get it for the things that you can't predict. True story, I officiated a wedding once in which the lighting fixture in the ballroom fell from the ceiling and landed on the guests during the ceremony. Like, I did not expect that to happen. That's, part of being a professional is learning how to act on your feet. But that's a situation that you can't ever imagine is going to happen, but these are why we have insurance. So I think it's always great that everyone should have it, of course, but in some cases you really may need it in order to be able to work at a venue.
Very great point. Oh gosh, that's such a crazy story. Okay, let's see. We have another question from Miriam. Is it imperative to have reviews and testimonials on your website?
I think so. Yes. I think that you have to remember that what you're trying to communicate to your couples is that they should trust you. You're trying to paint the picture for them. When you're trying to sell someone on something, you're not telling them about what you do, which is often the mistake when we design a website is we're saying, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. But instead you want to start with like, how are you going to make them feel? Like, what is the wedding that is going to be created by your presence there? What are you painting that picture for them? And a really powerful way to paint that picture is by having other people paint it for you. Having other people say, Laura costs less than our artisanal cheese plate, and she was worth every penny. Having couples be on there and saying, like, this is the experience that I had working with this person. That is really a powerful endorsement. So yes, I think it's really important. But of course, we all start somewhere. And so even if you don't have it right away, like once you get that first wedding, and you might even consider some strategy is like that you offer some kind of discount with the agreement that they will write some type of review for you. So it's not really a tit for tat like that, but it's like you can offer them something, that you're sweetening the pot. Like maybe you're putting them in a raffle. Like anybody who fills out a review this year gets a chance to win a $25 Google gift certificate. Just something to encourage couples, because it is hard, even when we get the business, to sometimes get people to share their experience with us. So thinking of creative ways to get your couples to leave testimonials is also really important.
Lovely. Yes, that is a very good point. Let's see. So Islam had a question kind of following up from the insurance questions. From where can you get insurance? If you have any like resources that you typically recommend for that?
Yeah, so this is why I recommend IAPWO. So it took me 10 years to be able to get a policy written for professional wedding officiants. 10 years. Because all of the insurance companies kept saying the group is too small. There's not enough officiants for us to underwrite that category. So now we have a company called PEEP Insurance, and PEEP Insurance has worked with us to create this specific policy that now there is one for wedding officiants. So if you're not able to be a member of the association, you can still get insurance. It just costs a little more, but PEEP Insurance, PEEP, is who I would recommend you talk to. His name is Dale.
Perfect. Okay, let's see. We had another question here from Nancy, and some people are answering on the chat. But I do want to ask you still, Laura, if she or they are a notary and have a notary website, do you need a separate site for wedding officiant work, or would you recommend one?
I see a lot of notaries who've combined one. In fact, I was just looking at one yesterday. They have a combined website. And that makes sense to me because those are very related services. So I don't see any problem in having both of those combined, but it really depends on what your strategy is. The one I saw yesterday, The woman was doing it for, doing real estate transactions, all different types of notary services. And she had it flow in a way that made perfect sense. Like she kind of set it up with like, I'm here for all of life's important transitions and events that require a professional. It was set up kind of like that. I was like, oh, that's really smart. So I think that it can be done, and you can have them housed in one location. No problem.
Yeah, what a great way to put that too. Let's see. So Miriam did have a question again about some testimonial gathering. Would you call a few months later after marrying them to ask them to write a review? How do you go about asking or receiving these testimonials from your couples?
Yes. I've called couples 2 years later. I don't call them. I send an email. I find, especially for today's couples, like they're going to prefer an email or a text. So if you had a really solid relationship with them and phone was what you were using before, then I don't think it hurts to reach out in that manner. But I usually have a couple touch points. Like first, I might send an email. And if I don't hear back, then a week later, I might send a text. So, you just want to kind of design a system for how you're going to set up and ask for your reviews. I have everything kind of set up automatically. So automatically, 10 days after the wedding completes, my CRM system sends them an email that says how much I love doing their wedding and links them to all of the different places that they can review me online. And I remind them that it can be very easy for them to give me a 5-star review by simply copying and pasting the same review everywhere. And so, you make it easy for them and more people are willing to do it. But it's still, think about how many products you buy on Amazon. How many of them did you write a review for? Even the ones you loved. Right? Like it does take that extra kind of encouraging and nudging. So I don't think there's any amount of time that's too long. Feel free to reach out. I still hear from couples I married 20 years ago.
That's fantastic. Okay, we do have another question. You had mentioned earlier you can do anything, but you can't do everything. So how specialized or selective should a new officiant be or not be at this point in time?
I think when you're first starting out, unless you have something really specialized already that that you're doing, like, I don't know, maybe you do underwater weddings. Okay, like, I don't know. Like if you've got something highly specialized, that's what you're doing, sure, sell on that. But I think in the beginning, you're really learning, like, what is it that you want to specialize in? I became really well known for doing interfaith ceremonies. And that happened over time. I didn't start out thinking like, oh, that's definitely what I want to do. I learned that those were the couples that just gelled with me the best, that I could provide the most value for. So I don't think that when you start, you need to be that specialized. And I also don't think that you need to say, and I do underwater weddings and cowboy weddings and 500 different kinds of weddings. I think that you focus instead on what kind of outcome will they have in a feeling state. Like I create these memorable personal ceremonies. We could say that without it sounding so generic. It still is coming from the heart, but it's not pigeonholing us into one specific thing that we might not be ready for yet.
That definitely makes sense. Okay, let's see. We had another question about CRMs. What do you use for your CRM?
Oh, well, I don't know if that's the most relevant question because I wouldn't say I necessarily recommend it for everyone else. And the reason is I have a large multi-op business with like more than 40 officiants. So what I have is like the power of what a single op officiant would just never need and require. And it was a lot of money in customizations to make it work for an officiant business. So for example, with Salesforce, that can be $100,000 to implement that. Like that's not going to necessarily be great for everyone's business. However, there are these really specialized services. A lot of them, again, member discounts through IAPWO. Honeybook is one of them. It was called Shoot Q, and then it got bought by someone, and now I can't remember the name. 17 Hats is another one that I really love. So, and again, those are, if you look on the member discounts page, which I think you can access just right on the IAPWO website, you'll see that some are listed there. So you may not even need that at first. Like for the first few years, I used an Excel spreadsheet, then I used an Access database. And so I would also say, like, don't go crazy with a whole bunch of tools until you really understand how your business works and what you need. So something that has a like a freemium model where you can start small is really nice. I love HoneyBook, like and 17 Hats. I think those are good options.
Okay, let's see. And we do have a couple questions left, but we are getting close to our time, so I want to get a couple in before we go. Robert has a question here. Been searching websites to advertise on. Any suggestions? And have you ever used Thumbtack?
Do I use Thumbtack? No, I do not. So advertising is one of those funny things that it really depends on what area you're in. So I serve a lot of different areas, and what works in one city does not work necessarily in another. And this goes back to your budget. So I'm not going to specifically say what site I'm talking about, but one of the very largest advertising options for the wedding industry. I just spoke to an officiant that wanted to join my team the other day. They're paying for a very basic level of advertising on that platform. And the reason that they're doing that is because they saw, oh, all of these other officiants in the market, like they seem like they're on this platform. So that's what I want to tell you. Just because you see someone else advertising on it does not mean it's the right fit for you. So this officiant told me that in order for her to break even for that ad, she has to perform 15 weddings. 15 weddings. Well, in the place where I live, there's really 4 main wedding months: May and June, September and October. Even if you were working every Saturday of all of those months, then you would basically just be working to pay for your advertising, not to mention your other business costs. So do not fall into the trap of advertising somewhere just because you see other people are doing it. That doesn't mean they're getting returns on their advertising. So you got to try a whole bunch of things to see what works. Different sites do different things. So Thumbtack, this is hard for me because I know a lot of people want to use it starting out, but it drives our profession to the bottom because it's taking officiants and it's making them a commodity, saying like, this is the same as getting your house painted, when it's really not the same as getting your house painted. You know, there's education, there's all of these other pieces that are involved. And so I think what happens on sites like that is sometimes it's really only about price. So if you're willing to work for the lowest price, yes, you'll get a lot of bookings, but that's not always the best way to build a business. So I love weddingofficiants.com because it's very inexpensive, and it's specifically for people who are looking for wedding officiants. So I love that. I like that when you're a member of IAPWO, you get to be in the directory for that $99. I think that's great. Local advertising, so getting on preferred vendor lists. Let's remember that couples start at the top of the chain with venues. That's what they do first, right? They book their venue and they move down. So if you can get on a preferred vendor list, that can be sometimes way more effective in terms of advertising because they're the ones with the big bucks spending to get those clients in the door. So once they're in the door, if you're being handed to them, that can be more effective. So whatever it is, really evaluate it in a business sense. When you get the pricing, think to yourself like, okay, if I had to do 16 weddings, am I planning on doing 100 weddings? And then, of course, then that would make sense. So it's very individualized.
Makes a lot of sense. Okay, and I think we have time for just one more question. What's a good price for starting out as an officiant?
Oh, I always talk about pricing every year at Wedding MBA. Somehow that's always like my topic. I actually, if you'll go on to the Mindfully LC that I put my TikTok, and you go to that page, you will see that there was recently a video posted. And that video was a post of what is the average price of a true professional wedding officiant? So when we were at Wedding MBA, we had all of the professional officiants that were there come up, say where they were and what they charged in their market. So if you go watch that, you'll see that that completely ranges. You know, in some markets, $200 makes sense. Where I am, $1,200 is totally fine. So it really totally depends on where you are, what you're offering, what's included in your packages. But you know, definitely more than the $25 that I've seen people advertise on TikTok. Let's say that.
Let's see.
Um,
I think there was one question about what the site was. I'm not sure if that was in reference to the TikTok that you were just talking about. But I know that
yes. Yeah, she said yes. So I'll type it in the chat here. This is my like TikTok handle. I'm old school, so I'm really not participating in TikTok, but I needed to put something up there so that I could post this IAPWO video. So you can go there and you'll be able to see it. And if you're already a member of IAPWO, we actually shared it with all the members so that then you could use it in your own advertising to normalize for the couples in your market. Like, hey, just so you know, a professional wedding officiant is not $50. You know, and it starts to help people hearing not just from you, because it sounds kind of, you know, like, is that believable if it's coming from the person selling it, telling you like, this is definitely worth $1,000. But now they can hear it and they can see that all over the country here, people are charging professional rates for their services. So it's a really great thing to be able to share, and so make it viral.
Perfect. Okay, and I think that's about our time. So thank you all so much for participating. We'll try to wrap up in the comments in the chat here, a few extra things or loose ends that we didn't quite get to here, but I will go ahead and replace the spotlight here. So Laura, thank you so much. That was fantastic. And as a closing out, if you guys enjoyed this class, do be sure to attend one of our live events with Officiant Accelerator. As Laura mentioned, Officiant Accelerator is an in-person event series by AMM in partnership with IAPWO, where you can learn how to deliver powerful ceremonies, build a successful practice in your community, and join a network of passionate wedding professionals to make some connections in a city near you. We'll be headed to DC next month, followed by Nashville, Houston, Salt Lake City, San Francisco, New York, and Columbus. So DC is sold out thus far. So Nashville is right around the corner. Be sure to get your tickets as soon as possible at the AMM store or the Officiant Accelerator website at officiantaccelerator.com. But before we head out, Jessica will be adding a link in the chat with more information on how to connect with Laura online and on social media, along with some resources for you to take with you on today's topic. So if you want to explore some of these further, you're got plenty to go from. So check out that in the chat and grab the link before you go. But thank you all for attending. This was a fantastic question and answer series. We're so happy to have Laura with us. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.